In 1953, the average British housewife spent 52 hours a week keeping her home clean. Not because she had nothing better to do, because the products she used actually worked. No sprays, no disposable wipes, no plastic bottles that cost £3.50 and smell of synthetic lemon. Just a handful of ingredients that cost pennies from the hardware shop, and knowledge passed between women who could not afford to get it wrong. Here is the part nobody tells you. The cleaning industry is worth £11 billion in Britain today. They need you to forget what your grandmother knew. Number 17 on this list was actively discouraged by manufacturers in the 1960s because it destroyed the market for an entire product category. And number 6 creates a chemical reaction that no modern spray can replicate. These 25 tricks scrubbed, whitened, and deodorized homes through rationing, coal fires, and 6 children under one roof. Before we begin, hit subscribe, because what you are about to learn might genuinely change what you put in your TESCO trolley. Let us count down. Before baking parchment showed up in every kitchen, your mum lined cake tins with grease-proof paper, and it worked better. She traced the tin bottom onto a sheet of greaseproof, cut a perfect circle, and pressed it into the greased tin. The trick was to grease both sides, the tin side to hold it in place, and the cake side for release. That thin coating created a barrier nothing could stick to. A whole roll cost maybe 6 pence and lasted 6 months. For a birthday Victoria sponge, this guaranteed the bottom came out flawless every single time. Modern non-stick spray fails about 30% of the time, and you have wasted the whole cake. Greaseproof paper was insurance you could count on. Before Windoline existed, every window in Britain was polished with a sheet of yesterday's Daily Mirror. Your mum would mix a small bowl of warm water with a splash of white vinegar, dampen a rag, wipe the pane clean, then scrunch a dry sheet of newspaper into a ball and buff in tight circles. The secret was the ink. In the 1950s, newspaper ink contained a mild solvent that cut through grime and left glass streak-free. The paper itself was dense and lint-free in a way cotton rags could never be. A broadsheet cost threepence and cleaned every window in the house. Modern microfiber cloths smear, paper towels leave lint, and a bottle of branded window cleaner costs £2.70 for something your grandmother could replicate with vinegar and a classified ad. She had cleaner windows than you do right now. That is a fact. The rule in every post-war household was immediate. Something spills, salt goes on first. Not a dab. A generous pour, enough to cover the stain completely while it was still wet. For red wine on the tablecloth, your mum would pile coarse salt over the spill and watch it draw the liquid upward like a poultice. For blood, always cold water first, and salt second. Never hot. Hot water sets protein stains permanently. The salt pulled the hemoglobin out of cotton fibers before it bonded. A pound of table salt cost less than a penny in 1955 and lasted 6 months in the cleaning cupboard. These rules were so ingrained that women whispered them at the scene of accidents before the host had even stood up from the table. They still work perfectly. They always did. Vim and Ajax were the abrasive powders your mum kept under the sink, but bicarbonate of soda was the gentler version she trusted on enamel. A pinch, sprinkled directly onto a damp cloth, was worked in small circles, then rinsed. The enamel came up white without a single scratch. The chemistry is simple. Bicarbonate crystals are just abrasive enough to shift grease and staining without cutting the surface beneath. They also neutralize odors, which is why the kitchen sink smelled clean rather than chemically masked. A tin from the chemist cost 4p and lasted months. Your grandmother used it on the sink, the bath panel, the draining board, and sometimes her teeth. She was not wrong about any of those applications. Hard water was a fact of life in most British towns. The kettle furred, the taps turned white, and the inside of the toilet bowl went brown. Your mum's solution was the other half of a lemon she had squeezed for the jug of water. She would rub it directly on the tap, the chrome fitting, the kettle spout. The citric acid dissolved calcium carbonate on contact. She would leave the lemon wedged against a bad patch for 20 minutes and come back to metal that gleamed. No scrubbing required. A bag of lemons from the greengrocer cost about $1 in 1956. The descaling tablet you drop in your kettle today costs more per use and is no more effective. The lemon also left a genuine clean smell, rather than the chemical approximation that comes in a spray bottle with pictures of citrus fruit on the label. Your grandmother's sideboard never had a mark on it. When you asked how she kept it so perfect, she would say, "cold tea," as if this were completely obvious. Brewed black tea left to cool was applied sparingly to dark wood furniture with a soft cloth. The tannins in the tea fed the wood and deepened the color without leaving residue. It worked as both a cleaner and a very mild stain that kept mahogany and walnut looking rich rather than dull. She would brew a pot, save the last cold inch, and use it the same afternoon. A quarter pound of tea cost £1 and 2 pence in 1954 and served double duty. This trick appeared in Women's Institute notebooks across the country, copied out in neat handwriting between recipes for dams and jam and instructions for darning socks. It works on any dark-stained wood, and it works beautifully. When children put grubby finger marks on the wallpaper, your mum did not panic, and she did not reach for a damp cloth. A wet cloth on wallpaper in 1953 meant a ruined wall. She reached for a stale heel of bread. The dry bread was rubbed gently over the mark in one direction, the crust acting as a mild abrasive that lifted the grime without wetting the paper. Pencil marks, soot smudges, and the particular grey film that accumulated near the light switch all responded to this treatment. This trick was listed in almost every domestic science textbook printed between 1920 and 1965. It vanished from public knowledge when washable vinyl wallpapers arrived in the 1970s, and everyone forgot that wallpaper was once a surface you had to treat with care. Before fabric conditioner existed, your grandmother achieved soft, fresh-smelling laundry with a splash of white vinegar added to the final rinse water. Half a cup into the dolly tub or the twin tub drum. That was all. The acid in the vinegar neutralized the alkaline residue from soap and washing soda, which was what made towels stiff and shirts scratchy. It also stripped the mineral deposits that hard water left in fabric fibers. The clothes came out soft, smelling faintly of nothing, which is what clean actually smells like. Not synthetic lavender, not antibacterial lemon. Nothing. Vinegar evaporates completely as the fabric dries. A bottle of white vinegar cost about 3p in 1957 and lasted a month. Lenore launched in Britain in 1966, and within a decade had convinced an entire nation that softness came from a plastic bottle rather than basic chemistry. It remains one of the most successful pieces of misdirection in marketing history. Here is where it gets interesting. The cleaning products that replaced these tricks were not more effective. They were more profitable. Procter & Gamble, Unilever, and Reckitt Benckiser collectively spent more on advertising in 1970 than the entire NHS spent on medicines. They did not need a better product. They needed a better story. And the story they told was that your grandmother's methods were old-fashioned, unhygienic, and inadequate for the modern home. None of that was true. Every item from here downward proves it. When the kitchen drain slowed, your mum did not call a plumber. She put the kettle on. A full kettle of boiling water poured slowly down the drain, dissolved the grease lining the pipe. Then she followed it with a handful of washing soda crystals and waited 10 minutes. Washing soda, sodium carbonate, is alkaline enough to cut through fat and lift organic matter without corroding the pipe. A box cost about 4p from any hardware shop. It weighed £1 and lasted 6 months. She used it once a month as maintenance and never had a blocked drain. The drain unblocker chemicals sold today are largely sodium hydroxide, a stronger alkali that does the same job but costs 12 times as much per use and damages older pipework over time. Your grandmother's approach was gentler on the house and harder on the blockage. She knew the difference. This one the cleaning companies actively buried. Fuller's earth is a naturally occurring clay mineral that was used for centuries to absorb grease and oil from fabric. In the 1950s, a bag cost a few pennies from the chemist. You sprinkled it on the grease stain, pressed it in, left it for an hour, then brushed it off. The clay particles drew the oil molecules out of the fabric by absorption. No water, no rubbing, no spreading the stain further. When proprietary dry cleaning solvents launched in the late 1950s, manufacturers marketed them as the modern solution to grease, effectively erasing the knowledge that clay did the same job for a fraction of the price and with no chemical smell. A Vanish spray today costs £3. Fuller's earth costs pennies from agricultural suppliers. Nobody tells you this. The front step was a matter of neighborhood honor. Every Monday morning in the terraces of Bradford, Leeds, and Manchester, women were on their knees with a donkey stone, rubbing the rough cream or buff-colored block across the sandstone step in tight circles until it dried to a pale, chalky white. Donkey stone was compressed whiting, cement and bleach powder formed into a block. It cleaned and whitened simultaneously, leaving a surface that repelled dirt for days. The ritual was social as much as practical. A clean step meant a clean woman, and a dirty step was noted. Entire streets would be freshly stoned by mid-morning. When terraced houses were demolished or modernized through the 1960s and 70s, the tradition went with them. You can still buy donkey stones from a handful of suppliers in the north. They work exactly as they always did. Your mum's white sheets were whiter than anything you can produce with biological washing powder today. The secret was Reckitt's Blue, a small fabric bag of synthetic ultramarine dye added to the final rinse. White fabric yellows naturally over time because it absorbs blue-violet wavelengths of light unevenly. A tiny trace of blue dye compensates optically, making the fabric appear brilliantly white rather than cream or yellow. This is the same technology used in every modern washing powder that claims to contain optical brighteners, except in 1955, a bag of Reckitt's Blue cost a halfpenny, lasted 20 washes, and left no chemical residue. The bag would be fished out and dried for next time. Your mother's pillowcases were brighter than a hotel's. Now you know why. Chrome, glass, and mirrors were cleaned with a small amount of methylated spirits on a lint-free cloth. Your mum would pour a capful onto a folded piece of old sheeting and wipe in straight strokes, top to bottom, without going back over areas she had already cleaned. Methylated spirits are industrial ethanol and evaporate almost instantly, leaving no residue, no smearing, and nothing for dust to cling to. It also killed bacteria and dissolved the greasy film that breath and fingerprints leave on glass. The mirror would stay clean for longer after methylated spirits than it ever does after branded glass cleaner. A bottle cost about 6p from the hardware shop and lasted months. Modern glass cleaners are largely water-based, which is why they smear if you use too much. Your grandmother never smeared a mirror in her life. The thing that should make you angry is this. The knowledge your grandmother carried was not lost by accident. It was replaced. Domestos launched in 1929 and spent the following decades funding hygiene propaganda through women's magazines and BBC home service broadcasts, warning that bacterial contamination lurked on every surface. Flash launched in 1959 with advertising that implied any surface not cleaned with Flash was potentially dangerous. By 1965, British women were spending 3 times as much on cleaning products as they had in 1950. Not because their homes were getting dirtier, but because they had been frightened into it. The hacks from here downward are the ones they really did not want you to remember. A raw potato, cut in half, and rubbed on a rusty knife blade. This was not superstition. The oxalic acid in potato juice is a mild chemical rust remover that dissolves iron oxide on contact. Your mum would sprinkle a little salt or bicarbonate on the cut face of the potato first, adding mild abrasion, then rub back and forth across the blade. The rust would come away within 2 or 3 minutes. She would rinse, dry, and put the knife away, sharp and clean. This worked on cast iron pans, carbon steel knives, and the bottom of the bread tin that had been sitting too close to steam. A potato cost a penny. Barkeeper's Friend contains oxalic acid and is currently sold for £4.50 a tin. It does the same job using the same chemistry. Your grandmother got there first. Every wardrobe had camphor, not just to protect woolen coats and blankets from moths, though it worked perfectly for that. Your grandmother used camphor strategically throughout the house. A camphor ball placed behind the S-bend of a rarely used toilet kept the bowl clean and odor-free for weeks. A small piece wrapped in muslin and hung in the larder deterred certain insects from dried goods. The vapor was strong enough to deter silverfish from books and linen cupboards. Camphor is a natural tree resin that repels insects through its volatile oils. A box of balls cost about 6pence in 1954. Today it has been almost entirely replaced by synthetic mothballs containing naphthalene, which is a petroleum product and classified as a possible carcinogen. The camphor your grandmother trusted was a tree resin. The alternative they sold you is a chemical byproduct. The irony would not have surprised her. When the kitchen window accumulated months of grease and cooking steam, your mum would cut an onion in half and rub the cut face directly on the glass. The sulfuric compounds in the onion juice cut through cooking grease with a sharpness that water alone could never manage. She would follow up with a dry newspaper buff, and the glass would be clean enough to see the garden clearly for the first time in months. The smell disappeared as the onion juice dried. This worked especially well on the inside of oven doors, which accumulate a baked-on brown film that no spray dissolves easily. The onion needed time and pressure, but it worked. The oven door cleaners sold today in dripping gel form cost upwards of £4 and require you to cover your hands and ventilate the room. The onion cost 3pence, and your grandmother did not need gloves. Copper and brass were the metals that made a kitchen look well kept or neglected. The pots, the coal scuttle, the door knocker, the letterbox all needed regular attention, or they turned an unforgiving greenish black. Your grandmother made her own polish with equal parts flour, salt, and white vinegar mixed to a paste. She applied it with a cloth, left it for 10 minutes, then rubbed it off and buffed the metal dry. The mildly acidic paste dissolved tarnish chemically, while the flour provided light abrasion. Brasso launched in Britain in 1905 and has been sold ever since as though it were irreplaceable. Your grandmother's paste cost almost nothing, contained no petroleum distillates, and left the copper gleaming just as brightly. She made a fresh batch as needed and stored no chemicals under the sink. The letterbox on her front door caught the light down the entire street. Something the adverts never mentioned: coal fires. Between 1945 and 1960, the majority of British homes were heated by coal. Coal produces fine black particulate that settles on every surface, works into fabrics, coats curtains, and turns net curtains grey within weeks. Every hack from here downward was designed partly around life with a coal fire in every room. Your grandmother was not just cleaning, she was fighting the atmosphere. And she was winning. The kitchen range was the heart of the home, and it had to be black. Brilliantly, deeply, almost wet-looking black. Every Friday morning, your grandmother would allow the fire to go out completely, wait for the iron to cool, and then apply black lead polish with a small, stiff brush, working it into every crevice of the cast iron. Black lead was a preparation of graphite and linseed oil, sold in small tins from the hardware shop for about threepence. Zebrite and Zebo were the familiar brands. Applied with a stiff brush and polished with a softer one, the paste gave cast iron both its protective coating and its deep ceremonial gloss. The range that was black-leaded properly did not rust. It kept its heat better. And it announced to anyone who walked through the back door that this was a household that took care of its things. The ritual lasted even after gas and electric cookers arrived, because some things matter beyond their function. Sunlight soap was a large yellow block that smelled clean in the way nothing manufactured today can quite replicate. Your mum kept a bar beside the kitchen sink and used it for dishes, hands, and the direct treatment of shirt collars before washing. She would dampen the collar, rub the bar directly along the fabric, work it in with her thumbnail, and leave the shirt for 20 minutes. The fatty acid soap penetrated the cotton fibers and surrounded the oils from skin and hair, which conventional soaps dissolved too slowly. A bar cost about threepence in 1955 and lasted weeks. The stain pre-treater sprays sold today are largely surfactants in water, which is the same chemistry as soap at 10 times the price. The collar came out perfectly clean with sunlight and a thumbnail. It always did. When the fountain pen leaked on a cotton blouse, your mum did not panic. She poured cold, whole milk into a bowl deep enough to submerge the fabric and left it to soak for 30 minutes. The proteins and enzymes in full-fat milk broke down the iron gall of traditional ink, lifting it from the cotton without the fabric stiffening or bleaching. She would rinse it in cold water afterward and wash as normal. This worked on Indian ink, on biro, and on the purple ink from school rubber stamps that came home on shirt cuffs every week. Skimmed milk does not work as well. The fat matters. Your grandmother knew this without needing a chemistry degree to explain why. This is the one cleaning trick companies specifically campaigned against, because it replaced an entire product category. When the kitchen sink blocked, your mum poured half a cup of bicarbonate of soda down the drain, followed immediately by half a cup of white vinegar. The fizzing reaction you could hear from the next room was sodium acetate forming. More importantly, the rapid effervescence physically dislodged the grease and food matter clinging to the inside of the pipe, carrying it down and away. She followed it with a full kettle of boiling water. The commercial drain unblockers that replaced this trick in the 1960s used sodium hydroxide, which required rubber gloves, created fumes, and occasionally cracked older glazed pipes. Your grandmother's method cost about a penny, required no protective equipment, and worked within minutes. It still does. The companies selling you Domestos Drain Clear would rather you did not know this. The oven was the hardest cleaning job in the house. Baked on fat, burnt sugar, the accumulating residue of 100 Sunday roasts. Your grandmother's solution was a small bowl of household ammonia, about 2 tablespoons, placed inside the cold oven overnight. The ammonia fumes, with no heat and no scrubbing, softened the baked-on grease by chemically breaking down the fat molecules. By morning, she could wipe the interior clean with a damp cloth and a little effort. No caustic chemicals, no waiting 3 hours with oven cleaner foam. Household ammonia cost 6p a bottle from the hardware shop, and it lasted months. Mr. Muscle Oven Cleaner, which contains caustic soda and requires the user to ventilate the room and avoid touching their face, costs £4.50 and needs to be left for 45 minutes. Your grandmother's ammonia required no contact at all. Here is what is remarkable about every hack on this list. None of them were invented by housewives. They were remembered by them. White vinegar's acidity was documented by Roman writers. Salt's drawing properties have been known since ancient Egypt. Bicarbonate's alkalinity was standard chemistry in 1840. Your grandmother was not being clever. She was being educated. The knowledge had been passed down through generations of women who could not afford to unlearn it. What changed in the 1960s was not technology, it was television. And television sold something better than a clean house. It sold the idea that buying things was the same as knowing things. Borax was the unsung hero of the 1950s laundry, the cleaning cupboard, and the larder. A white crystalline powder sold in small green boxes for about 4p. Borax served as a laundry booster, a surface disinfectant, a mold inhibitor, and a pest deterrent all at once. Added to the washing water, it softened hard water and boosted the cleaning power of soap. Sprinkled around the base of a larder shelf, it deterred cockroaches and ants. Mixed to a paste with water and left on mold-affected grout, it killed the spores and prevented regrowth for months. Your grandmother kept one box and used it for a dozen purposes. The modern equivalent would require a fabric conditioner, a limescale remover, a mold spray, and an ant powder, collectively costing upwards of £15 and occupying an entire shelf under the sink. She kept hers in a single green box next to the bread bin. Zote soap, the pink laundry bar that smelled of citronella and something herbal and impossible to name, was the working-class housewife's secret weapon against everything that happened to fabric. Not for everyday washing. Zote was the emergency bar. When school trousers came home with grass stains on both knees, when blood hit white cotton, or when mud dried into the weave of a blouse, your grandmother would run cold water over the stain, press the fabric directly to the Zote bar, and rub in tight circles with her thumb and forefinger, working the soap into the fibers. She would roll the fabric between her knuckles the way a washerwoman rolls a garment at the board, not scrubbing across the stain, but driving the soap through it. Then she would leave it. 15 minutes, half an hour, then rinse. The stain would be gone. Not faded. Gone. A Zote bar cost 3p and lasted 8 weeks. A Vanish Oxy Action Gel costs £3.60 and has a lower success rate on dried organic staining. This is not nostalgia. This is chemistry. Zote still exists. You can order it today. This is not one hack. It is the principle behind all of them. It is the one most comprehensively destroyed by modern cleaning culture. Every 1950s housewife knew that heat set stains. Blood, egg, milk, meat, anything protein-based, anything organic, would be permanently bonded to fabric the moment hot water touched it. Cold water first. Always. Before you think, before you panic, before you reach for anything else. Cold water. She knew this the way she knew to cut bread with a sharp knife and store flour in a tin. It was not a trick. It was a rule, and it was passed on with the seriousness of a rule, not a suggestion. The modern reflex is to reach for a spray, to apply heat in the tumble dryer, to use hot water because hot water feels more powerful. Every time, the stain locks in. Every time, the spray does partial work on a stain that should have been dissolved completely in 30 seconds under a cold tap. Your grandmother never ruined a sheet or a shirt to a stain. She would have found that extraordinary. You probably cannot say the same. The single most effective cleaning hack your 1950s housewife knew was a schedule. Monday was washing. Tuesday was ironing. Wednesday she cleaned the upstairs rooms. Thursday was the kitchen and the range. Friday was the step, the hall, and the brass. Saturday was shopping. Each task was given its proper time and done completely, not partially between other things, not deferred until the weekend, not spread across a fortnight of half-hearted passes with a cleaning wipe. She cleaned the whole house every week, not a room at a time, not when guests were coming. Every week. Because each surface was addressed on a regular cycle, nothing had time to deteriorate beyond what a simple method could correct. The vinegar, the borax, the soda crystals, the zote bar, the cold water, the newspaper, and the donkey stone worked because they were used before the problem became a crisis. No modern product works on a stain that has been sitting for 3 weeks. Nothing does. Your grandmother knew that the most powerful cleaning tool she owned was not in a bottle, it was in the calendar on the kitchen wall. One of these this week. Just one. The newspaper on the windows, the bicarbonate down the drain, or the cold milk on an ink stain. Try it, and then tell me in the comments whether it worked. Because I have run every hack on this list. There is a green borax box on my shelf right now. My whites are brighter than they have been in years. My copper pots catch the light the way they are supposed to. I have not bought a bottle of drain unblocker in 8 months. Your grandmother knew. Now so do you.